I'm not a fearful flyer. I had every experience you can have flying through thunderstorms in the Southeast as a child on a small airplane. So I'm a very comfortable flyer with commercial aviation, but I've got a family that everyone is they're all nervous flyers. And there has been a spate of incidents with commercial aviation and even private aviation here over the last few months. And of course, the media, there's something like 45,000 deaths a year in the US on highways, right? And automobile accidents. And, if they published every accident that happened in an automobile at night, that would consume 30 minutes of the news. But when an airplane crashes, it is huge news. I think that it gives this false perception of the risk associated with air travel. At the same time, it appears there is a legitimate shortage of air traffic controllers. It appears that there is more business aviation jets in the air now because of that use of the fractional use of the planes. Is there something going on in aviation where it's becoming less safe, or is this just happens to be a random series of events that occur in a cycle?
Well, it's not less safe, but there's more visibility because of social media. So if you look at the numbers, they're public data, NTSB, the number of accidents and incidents has not gone up. So that it is much safer to fly every year than it has been the year before. So nothing to worry about there, but there is definitely more visibility of it and probably very avoidable incidents and accidents.
Yeah.
And so like in the business jet space, my biggest concern is, yes, utilization of aircraft are going up. What we're trying to change in our industry is, making sure that people aren't making decisions based off relationships, but looking at the quality aspect of aircraft maintenance. Because you think in the labor force, the average age and experience of a mechanic right now is going down because they're retiring. New guys are coming in. There's aviation schools all the time, and that's how we're combating the labor shortage with mechanics, right? That's really personal to obviously our business. And so even though we're replenishing as many mechanics as we can, it's with new mechanics. So your average experience goes down. And so that my biggest worry is, we attract really good talent, experienced talent, but we pay a lot for it. But at scale, that's an industry challenge. Is the operator, the customer too, isn't looking at that and is still looking at, in terms of business jets, the sales cycle traditionally being more relationship based. And I think they need to look at, hey, we need to invest more in maintenance and quality to make sure we don't go on the news, not just follow what we've been doing for the last 20 years. We need to ask the question. And so when I was the operator, I'd ask the question of, what's your retention rate on mechanics? And some of the companies, one of the companies told me 8 months. And I go, yeah, we lost like half our workforce. And we've been doing business with them for years. I'm like, well, I'm glad I asked the question. I told my team, like, we got to get out of there. We can't. With our age of aircraft, it was just too big of a risk. And so that's not being talked about enough. It's still too much on the sales cycle, making decision of where to take your airplane, on cost. Even though they say that's not important, it still is. I probably lose a bid once a month or more than that now, because people take my cost and undercut it, and we don't play that. I go, well, the time it takes to do it didn't change. That's all I can tell the customer. I've struggled with how to digest that, by the way, is if someone takes my bid and cuts it, and I know they're doing it faster and cheaper, that's good for them, but I don't combat that because there's no way I can all of a sudden do it faster and cheaper. And all our bids come from production, from the mechanics. I don't have sales folks in between. And so my worry is, if that's happening, how did they do that? And so I've been trying to follow up. I don't have an answer for this. It's more of a question of how do I combat that, or tell the operator, like, okay, if you found a cheaper, faster option, great, but I wouldn't make that decision on those two premises. But it's safe. Like business jets, I think the utilization's going up, yes, but the right questions aren't being answered, and they should be challenging maintenance organizations to, what's your labor turnover, and can you really perform like you did 5 years ago or 10 years ago when you had a robust, experienced labor force? Because no one does. It's all changed. Yeah. No one's asking how that's changed. Commercial, I think, is super mature. It's fine. Air traffic control is a separate issue. Yes, there's more traffic in the air, like by major percentage points every year. I think there's a good focus now. Unfortunately, it took some big events, but to get that staffed up, whereas the last 5 years I saw getting staffed down. But my biggest push, being on the maintenance side, is bringing awareness, this decision-making of where you take your aircraft, and asking some different questions than people have ever asked before.